shadows of the old Three Tankards pub as four friends occupied their usual table in the corner. It had been their favorite spot since their student days, and for 10 years they had met there every Friday to drink beer, talk about life, and simply be together. But today was a special day. Exactly 1 year ago, their friend Jake drowned in a lake while on holiday together.
Mark ordered 5 glasses of dark beer, Jake's favorite. He placed 4 in front of himself and the others, and left the 5th on the opposite side of the table as a sign of respect. To Jake, he said quietly, raising his glass. To Jake, Lena, Sam, and Kevin repeated. They drank in silence, each reminiscing about something different. That day was still fresh in their minds. The lake, the screams, the empty boat, and then the body, which wasn't found for 3 hours. The investigation concluded it was an accident. Jake swam too far and drowned. Everyone seemed resigned to the situation, but a bitter aftertaste lingered. Remember how he loved to fool around? Sam broke the silence. Last New Year's, he dressed up as a rabbit and jumped all over the bar. Lena smiled through her tears. And how did he sing karaoke? He had no voice, but he screamed louder than everyone else. Kevin was silent. He sat staring into his drink, not saying a word from the very beginning. Kev, what's wrong? Mark asked. You're not yourself today. Kevin winced and looked up. It's okay. It's just rough. They fell silent again. The rain had picked up, the wind battering the glass. There were few people in the pub, only a group sitting at a far table, and the bartender was wiping glasses behind the counter. Suddenly, the door swung open with a bang. A cold gust of wind blew in, bringing with it the smell of dirt and dampness. A man stood in the doorway. Wet from head to toe, his jeans and t-shirt stuck to his body. Water poured off him in streams, forming puddles on the floor.
He took a step forward, and the light fell on his face. Lena screamed. Mark dropped his glass. Sam jumped up, knocking over his chair. Only Kevin remained seated, gripping the table with white-knuckled fingers. It was Jake. He walked up to their table and stopped, looking at each of them in turn. His eyes were empty, water still dripping from his hair. Jake? Mark whispered. This can't be. You're dead. Jake slowly turned his gaze to him, a weak, sad smile appearing on his lips. I didn't drown, he said quietly, but his voice held a steely determination. I was drowned, and whoever did this sits among you. He sat down on the empty chair, directly across from the 5th, untouched glass. He picked it up, took a sip, and set it down. All 4 of them stared at him, speechless. I know who it was, Jake continued. And he knows too. The only question is, will he have the courage to confess? He glanced at his friends. Mark, Lena, Sam, Kevin. One of them was the killer. A man they'd known all their lives. Well? Jake asked. Silence? A deathly silence fell over the pub, broken only by the patter of rain on the glass. Then Kevin slowly rose from the table. Kevin stood, gripping the back of his chair, looking at Jake. His face was pale, sweat beaded on his forehead. The others froze, unsure what was happening. Kev? Lena looked at him in horror. What are you doing? Kev didn't answer. He looked only at Jake, and fear was evident in his eyes. Pure animal fear. Sit down, Kevin, Jake said quietly. We're not done yet. You can't be here, Kevin managed, his voice shaking. You're dead. I saw you fall. I saw, Jake nodded. And you didn't call for help. You didn't jump for me. You just stood there and watched. Mark looked from one to the other. What do you mean you didn't call? Kevin, were you there? You said you and Jake had a fight and left early. Kevin was silent. Jake chuckled, but there wasn't a hint of humor in his laughter. He was there. He was there when I was drowning. We had a fight over that girl, Lisa. Remember Lisa? The one who came to visit us at the lake? Kevin wanted to date her, but she chose me. He never forgave me. Sam paled. Wait, you mean Kevin? I didn't push him. Kevin shouted. The boat capsized. He fell into the water. I just didn't jump. He was a worse swimmer than me. I knew he wouldn't survive. And I stood there and watched. Lena covered her face with her hands. Mark clenched his fists. You let him drown, he whispered. You watched your friend drown and did nothing. What could I have done? Kevin almost screamed. He took Lisa away from me. He was always the best, always the center of attention. I just wanted him to go away. And you got your way. Jake stood up from the table. Water was still dripping off him, but now it was black as oil. But I didn't leave. I stayed there, in the lake, lying at the bottom, looking up and thinking, why? Why? And then I realized I wouldn't leave until I knew the truth. And I wouldn't bring back the man who killed me. He took a step toward Kevin. He stumbled back, hitting his back on the next table. Stay back, he shouted. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. You meant to, Jake replied calmly. And I mean to. I want you to come with me. Where it's dark and cold. Where the fish bite your face. Where you'll lie on the bottom and think about what you've done. He held out his hand. It was blue and swollen, with bits of seaweed on his fingers. Kevin screamed and ran for the exit. The door swung open. Beyond it was not the street, but water. Black, deep, cold. Kevin froze on the threshold, staring into the abyss. Jump, said Jake. Or stay. The choice is yours. Mark, Lena, and Sam watched as their friend stood on the threshold between life and death. Lena was crying. Mark wanted to rush to Kevin, but Sam held him back. Don't, he whispered. It's his duty. Kevin turned around one last time. Tears welled in his eyes.
Forgive me, he said and stepped into the darkness. The door slammed shut. The water disappeared. Outside, the rain continued to pour and soft music played in the pub. 3 people sat at the table. The 4th was gone, neither alive nor dead. Jake stood by the door, looking at them. He was no longer wet. He was wearing the same clothes he'd worn that last day at the lake. He smiled, but now it was a real smile. Thank you, he said, for remembering, for not forgetting. Now I can go. He walked to the table, picked up his glass, drained the beer, and set it down. Then he turned and walked out into the night. The door closed quietly behind him. Silence fell over the pub. They sat for a long time, unable to speak. Finally, Mark looked up and saw the empty chair opposite him. The glass was empty. He's gone, he said quietly. And Kevin? Lena asked. No one answered. The next morning, Mark received a call from the coroner. Kevin's body had been found in the lake, the same one where Jake had drowned a year earlier. He had been sitting on the shore, leaning his back against an old oak tree,
dead for several hours. The water hadn't yet dried from his clothes. A calm expression had appeared on his face, as if he had finally overcome his fear. Mark, Lena, and Sam met at the morgue. They didn't speak to each other, simply standing in the rain, waiting for the coroner to come out. An hour later, a man in a raincoat appeared and approached them. "Your friend died of cardiac arrest," he said. "There are no signs of foul play, but there is one odd thing." "What?" Sam asked. "They found this next to him." The coroner handed them a clear plastic bag. Inside was an old photograph. It showed the five of them laughing at a picnic the day before Jake's death. Mark picked up the bag, peered into it, and felt the blood drain from his face. In the photograph, behind them, in the shadows of the trees, stood another figure. Blurred, but recognizable. Kevin. But Kevin was in the frame from the front. This one stood behind them, looking straight into the lens. His eyes in the photograph were like black holes. "What does this mean?" Lena whispered. The investigators shrugged. "Our forensics experts couldn't explain it. Perhaps a film defect. We're giving you the photograph."
They were left alone in the rain. Lena was shaking. Sam was looking at something. Mark was fiddling with the photograph. "He said he wouldn't leave until he took the one who killed him," Mark said quietly. "He took Kevin. Now it's over." "Do you really believe that?" Lena asked. "Ghosts?" "I believe my eyes. Jake was here. I saw him. Kevin jumped through the door leading to the water. And today they found him in the lake." Sam was silent. He took the photograph from Mark and stared for a long moment at the blurry figure behind them. "You know," he finally said, "I don't think this is the end. I think you'll stay with us. Forever." "Oh." Lena didn't understand. "Jake and Kevin. Both of them. They're in this picture together. And they'll be in all the next ones, too." He turned the photograph over. On the back, in the childish handwriting Jake's mother had once used, was written, "Our friendly bunch. Together forever." Lena burst into tears. Mark hugged her. Sam pocketed the photograph. A month passed. They were sitting in their corner of the Three Tankards pub again. Only now there were 3 people at the table, and 2 chairs were empty. On each chair sat a full glass of dark beer. "To Jake and Kevin," said Mark, raising his glass. "To Jake and Kevin," Lena and Sam repeated. They drank in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Rain pounded the windows, the wind howled in the chimney. The pub was quiet, except for a group of young people sitting at a far table. Suddenly, Lena smiled through her tears. "You know," she said, "I can hear them." "Who?" Sam asked. "Jake and Kevin. They're laughing. Over there, in the corner." Mark and Sam turned around. There was no one in the corner. Only the shadows of candles danced on the walls. But Mark heard it too. A quiet laugh, painfully familiar. And then Jake's voice, "We'll always be there. Let's drink to our friends." And a second voice, Kevin's, "Forgive us. For everything." Lena raised her glass and clinked it with the empty air. Sam did the same. Mark smiled and finished his beer. It was raining outside. Inside, music was playing. And at a table in the corner sat 5 friends who had never been apart. 3 living and 2 dead, but still together.
Forever.